Thank you, Angela. So but we have some space now for questions and answers. Could we ask the team to set up for the questions at the front? Do you need a hand? So in the meantime, let's start thinking about any questions for the panelists based on what you've heard. We've had the thinking about the global dialogue for seafood traceability, so kind of the systems level thinking from Hugh, and then Marcelo took us through the journey of what are the key information we need to know for the crew welfare, and then Hugh took us back to what do the markets need, what's the frame for markets in electronic monitoring, and then Angela took us then to some of the issues that are being seen in the Indian Ocean yellowfin tuna stocks around the use of buoys or FADs for the fishery. So that's kind of been our four focus areas. Would you be okay to join us up the front? So we have Pak Farid over here, and Mark, I think, are going to help us with the questions on the sides. And there's your microphones. So but I'll kick us off first with a question for you all, which is, given our session is about market drivers and enabling these technologies, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see in your work that are really blocking the market adoption of some of those technologies? So who would like to go first? Marcelo, take it away. Yes, challenges.
Well, first of all, the challenge was to increase the awareness to the members, to the fleet, about the importance to demonstrate compliance, even though we are doing the right thing, but we have to communicate it. Everything was driven by market players. Actually, our customer, our retailers and distributors, they started to request us how we can demonstrate that our crew on board are receiving a decent living and working conditions. So to approach and to open books on board each fleet was a challenge. In the beginning, they were asking why you are asking for so much documents. But now, when we just said we go for a traceability platform to upload all that information, they are fine. Okay. But was a process almost 2 years.
Okay. Hugh, would you want to add?
Sure. So from a GDST point of view, there's been 2 or 3 challenges. The first is that the standard was actually launched just as COVID hit, which meant that some of the socialization and the impact that the standard had was lost, and I think it's fair to say it lost some momentum because of that. Secondly, there's been a lack of clarity from some of the governments in terms of their policies on seafood traceability, whether that's import or catch documentation and monitoring programs, and so I think we need to see some clarity. And then thirdly, we've also then seen supply chain issues, cost of living crises, other issues that have affected supply chain owners, and quite honestly, making fundamental changes to their traceability systems has become a bit more of a challenge in the short term. But we are seeing that people are understanding the value of GDST, and some of those barriers are being removed. But unfortunately, time and having people just understanding what it's about is key to addressing those.
Okay, thank you. Angela?
Sure. From the perspective of collaboration, maybe not enabling for market drivers, it's really institutional at this point. It feels like there's such rapid development of technology that's enabling so many different amazing data collection points that institutions aren't necessarily set up at the moment to rapidly respond and take it in a transparent and beneficial way, especially in the RFMO context where they're primarily getting data from country governments versus directly from fishers or private industry. So that's definitely a challenge considering that there is an opportunity there, but these blocks that have been in place for a long time.
Excellent. Sure.
From an EREM adoption point of view, I think the single biggest barrier, and I'm sure some of the people in the industry that have worked with me over the years won't thank me for this, but they don't know what vessels are supplying them. They may well do from a tuna point of view to a point, but when you get into the wider wild capture supply chains, a lot of brands, retailers and processors, value-added processors, don't actually know the vessels, and so they can't understand where electronic monitoring and electronic reporting can be a benefit. And so I think there's a bit of due diligence work and supply chain mapping that lots of brands, retailers and supply chain owners need to do, which is fundamental to being able to adopt some of this technology and the EREM opportunity that presents itself.
Excellent. Okay, I'd like to turn to the audience now. Would we have any questions for our panelists? There you go, nice. Pat Farid, there's a nice lady. There we go. And maybe introduce yourself and your organization, and then the question, if that's okay.
Okay. Hi, my name is Monica Jadwiga Shanaka. I am from CCMAR at the University of Algarve in Portugal. And my question is, I guess to all of you, is how would one encourage the various vessels in uptaking these types of electronic monitoring systems?
Good question.
I pass.
Marcelo?
Could you please repeat the last part about how we?
How would you encourage the fishers themselves to uptake this monitoring systems? Because it's not just the industry that matters, it's obviously the fishers that are going to have it on their vessels.
Well, it's a very good question and difficult to answer. I can speak on behalf of our fleet, and was not easy. Was a due diligence process that took 2 years, and now with this scalable and proven model, we are moving into artisanal fishery that is lobster. And we have to start from zero again. Divers and dinghies and the fishermen there, they don't want to share anything. So now we have to educate again. So I can put it in another way. We are doing a due diligence process. We are doing a private initiative. We are going across an implementation of a management system with different level of control, and going into a third-party certification as a solution. But life will be easier if every country ratify the ILO Convention 188. This is government duty. So if every country ratify the ILO Convention 188, they will monitor and do enforcement and compliance and control of every different fishery. However, because of the speed to ratify conventions, as a private sector, we see the need to demonstrate compliance for our clients and retailers. So I hope I am answering your question somehow, but that is the situation.
Great question. One of the biggest challenges is, and we're all the same, we like business as usual. We like to get up in the morning and do what we've always done. So trying to change people's culture and habits is difficult. I think the fundamental challenge that's often been missed by NGOs, and I've criticised many of the NGOs, including Pew, who I am a consultant to, is that they've missed that actually the adoption and implementation of EREM is actually an external benefit to the fishers and the fishing companies. It reduces their profits, it reduces their ability to continue what they're doing, but actually it benefits the governments, and it benefits the exporters, and it benefits their customers and the consumers. And so the best schemes really need to be government-led. They need to be financed, I would suggest, by governments with some form of clawback, because there will be benefits to access to market, to assurance, or there needs to be some structural funds given. I've been told, well, that's great, but it ain't going to happen here. Well, tough. If that's what needs to happen to change the dynamic of the plethora of reports that could probably fill this room to show how wonderful it is, but the adoption is not there. Everybody has a smartphone because they have a benefit to having it, and we need to change that balance for EREM. There's huge benefits to the global publicly owned wild capture fisheries, and I think it has to be something more done with governments to enable that from an industry point of view.
Great question. Number 2. Please introduce yourself as well.
Hi. Sorry.
There you
My
go.
voice is
That's all right.
and I always get.
You almost lost us then.
So hope everyone's awake now. Sorry, I'm Shannon Hardesty. I'm from the International Pole and Line Foundation. And actually, Hugh, you lined me up for my question really well. One of the things that we're sort of thinking about is when it's been this uptake, even with international market, is the sort of alignment with policy, sort of government policy and market, and the timing and engagement really needs to be sort of carefully managed. And I was wondering, do any of you have any thoughts or experience on ways to better encourage particularly international markets to engage with governments on their policy? I know you mentioned RFMOs, but I wondered if there was anything else.
I'll kick off if that's okay. I think the first thing is to have an acceptance that actually capturing data and having a volume moving through is important, and not be so precious about the quality of data to start with. Actually getting the information flows going, getting people getting used to it, and then embarking on, is the quality and the veracity of the data sufficient to do what was needed for it? Many people sometimes, I think, and governments themselves are guilty of this, of setting a bar that's far too high. People do it, they start the process, they get kicked and stamped on, and then they say, well, what is the bloody point? And so actually, if you enable people to get socialized and understanding with these things, and then you start weighing and measuring the quality and veracity of the data, and I think that's one of the other things that needs to come from a government point of view and their policies to make this happen.
Well, I was thinking, from where should I start? From the general point of view, traceability, I mean, there is a lot of benefits and economy benefits, but also market access benefit. Our members, the SIG factories, already experienced that after passing the completeness test. They have seen a benefit to be aligned with this tool. Besides, we have a almost real-time traceability platform already for decades. Going to the specific point of social accountability, leading by example. After passing almost 3 years just to get a certification and to develop this assurance model, now the National Fishery Authority of Papua New Guinea is asking the industry to help them to set up a labor department, which for us, labor department for fisheries, to inspect fisheries, not only tuna, but other fisheries too. Something that came in the second meeting was why they should set up a labor department for fisheries when the first thing they should do is go for the ILO Convention 1AA ratification. So I think a way to align governments with this movement of traceability is good example and lobby.
Oh, good. Next question at the back. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Kai from MDPI, small-scale fisheries NGO. We work here in Indonesia in the eastern part, and I've got two questions, maybe one from you, for Hugh, sorry if I'm saying that correctly, and the other one from Angela. Hugh, one question that I have is, we implement MSC, we implement fair trade in eastern Indonesia. You mentioned the buyers, how to actually connect the buyers so they can understand the reality of the field too. We have a feeling that, for instance, with EM, it can seem feasible for them to say, okay, well, we want all the small-scale fisheries that are part of certification to have EM technology. That could be an idea in the US, but the reality in the field is much, much different. So what's your take on connecting those buyers who are maybe in the US or Europe and don't per se understand the complexity of that Indonesia carries, and to actually bring them so that they can see with their own eyes whether those measures or whether those ideas are actually realistic or not. Yeah, thank you. And I've got one for you,
Yeah,
Angela, too.
we'll
but
do
I'll
that
ask
in a
it later.
sec, Kai.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hugh.
Yeah, so you're talking about small-scale fisheries and
tuna,
artisanal and adoption of EREM. Yeah, the challenge comes, I used to work for a UK retailer. My job was to be the conscience of the seafood consumers, the shoppers. And there's an expectation when you say you have, and you do X, Y, and Z, that it's on everything. Because I'll be honest with you, lots of people don't know that there's wild capture and there's farmed, and they don't know there's industrial and there's artisanal. They just see fish on the counter and they see fish on the plate. And so there needs to be balance. That's the first challenge. Number two, I think there's lots of NGOs who think they do a piece of work in one place and then just parachute it in and adopt it somewhere else and off you go. And that's wrong. It needs to be a global solution with a local input. I think that there needs to be, I think it's fair to say that the NGOs and many governments are focused on the industrial fleet because they have to establish the concepts. And now there is a recognition that there needs to be a movement to take in the artisanal and the small-scale fleets. And I think the SDGs with Leave No One Behind as a theory and an agenda is helping to deliver that. Is it perfect? No. Is there a lot more work to do? Absolutely. But my message is it's not going to go away because the people who ultimately consume that fish expect the same level of assurance and oversight and transparency to happen, and it just needs to be a different solution. And it's not beyond our wit and our ability to find those solutions. We just haven't done it yet.
Is that good, Kai?
Thank
So
you.
over to question 2.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, if that's possible. Yeah, I'll be sure. Angela, question. About 2 weeks ago, I joined this training, and they were mentioning some physical oceanographers about sea star big data, so really trying to inform fishers or fishing crews about oceanographic maps with physical oceanography to actually be more effective while fishing. I asked them, could that be a solution for the FATs? So if they get access to these maps and access to this information or not. What's your take on that? Is that a conflict or not? Did you manage to ask that? Yeah, it's just an overarching question that I might have. I know there's some providers here, so I can also ask them. Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to look into that, so can we talk more after so I can hear more about what this is based on? Okay, cool. Sorry.
Okay, great.
Thanks,
Jeffrey.
Yep. Yeah, Jeffrey Muldoon, WWF. Just picking up on a few of the points the team up there around data and data quality and the role of government and market access. Bit of a Hail Mary question, but we're seeing quite a bit of movement in the seafood import space at the moment at the government level. So you've got the US is reviewing theirs, the EU is, Australia's looking at imposing one, Japan's recently imposed one. Is there, I guess it's got two parts. So is this seen as an opportunity, as a lever that could help advance aspirations around better reporting, better monitoring, and is there also seen as opportunities for collaboration? We're talking about big data here, so are there opportunities for collaboration and sharing and between governments and sort of levering this sort of, one would think, bigger appetite for monitoring seafood imports through the kinds of things that you guys have been discussing here today?
Yeah, I think part of the aspects of FADs is some limited traceability, especially related to, if someone steals a FAD and there isn't a registration and the number gets shaved off, how do you know whether or not that fish that was caught from that FAD was in fact okay for importing and traceable? So I do think that if there's shifts in markets and what they're taking in and not taking in, that could really influence how we go about managing the FAD fishery. It's going to have to. It's going to be a huge pressure if there's much more scrutiny associated with it. So it's definitely an interesting question in that context, but I will pass on to my other panelists.
Yeah, thank you for your question. In the case of FIA PNG, this has increased collaboration, but the restriction ends in funding to pay for research or go and develop a long-term research. So now what we have been doing is with other NGOs like Global Fishing Watch and GDST to create this challenge to try to invite retailers to open also the platform to do this global traceability work. Another project that we are now engaging is with the SPC, the Secretary of Pacific Countries, to monitor and our fat. We have small catches between 3 to 4%. But we are engaging because they have the funds. We have data, which is priceless, and our fleet representatives, they want to open data to be analyzed. But to develop this type of collaboration, there are several elements to consider, especially when they are pre-competitive between several platform NGOs. Everybody try to pull for their own side.
There's certainly an understanding, I think, of supply chains and some of the issues within them, which has been a real driver. The digitization of supply chains is coming whether we like it or not, and I think the opportunity for governments and industry, wherever they sit, is to adopt that. And I think the other point to make is that governments, like everybody, have got limited resources. We're very good at creating new problems, and when does a problem become an issue? When somebody makes it one. And more are thrown at industry to address, and the priority of some of these issues are getting bigger. Governments are expected to do more with the same, and so I think the opportunity with the adoption of electronic monitoring, with data, with standardized data through things like the GDST, alignment of what's being expected globally is coming. Governments are recognizing that. I see challenges in that if you take Japan, the EU and the US, they're all currently working on revisions to their schemes, but they won't sit down trilaterally and have a conversation. They want to have bilateral conversations, which creates challenge and frustration. But there is a general harmonization, which is great, and so I think the opportunity is certainly coming, and there has to be collaboration. We can't afford to duplicate the effort, and we can't afford to not give government capacity building, which I think if you take from a market point of view, has been missing within a lot of the work that's been going on to date. It's been about catch the thief, avoid the eye, not really work on the unregulated and unreported, not work on the transparency, because heck, if I know I've got to do something about it, but it's coming and people just have to recognize it, and then we can work with governments to build their capabilities as well.
Very good. Any other questions?
Arif Shah from Greenpeace. So I have one question for you, Hugh, and also for Marcelo. So for Hugh, because you said also there is so much limitation from the government side, but I think the government is really playing a really key important roles to say, let's say maybe to put some market incentive to those players that really playing good. So you think in terms of the priority, what kind of the government's incentive need to put so the traceability could be I think growing and also expanding in the right direction. So what kind of the incentive that government should put for industries? And for Marcelo, actually, I really would like to know about the percentage between the fishers that working in the PNG waters, whether it's coming from local and also from others country, how the percentage between those two, and is there any difference in terms of the minimum wage? Yeah. Because I think the fishers is the most important thing for the fisher actually about the wage. So if they can get a good wage, regardless local or migrant, I think that's really could maybe resolve many things as a start. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so Hugh first. Did you get the question?
I think so, and if I missed the answer, then let's see. I think the first thing from a government point of view in terms of incentive is to have fit-for-purpose policy. There's lots of policies out there that governments have that really are not credible. They're either far too lofty and unachievable, or they're so basic that they achieve nothing for anybody. The second thing is they need to be properly implemented, and there needs to be a dialogue which includes industry, NGOs and the government themselves, and that they do the work properly. If you look at Millennium Development Goals, it was NGOs and government, and the SDGs have got industry in there, and I think that's the opportunity. And I think the second thing is to get some clear demonstrations, support some of the thought leaders to demonstrate within the country how things can be done. You know, people tend to move in packs. To go first, from an industry point of view, it costs you money. There's no glory being last, and everybody likes to move together. And so you need to do that. Governments need to encourage those first ones where there's a cost to demonstrate it could be done. Because once one or two have done it, there's no argument. As people start to move in the pack, the government then moves from demonstrating to catching those idiots that choose economic ignorance to make money by not doing it. And that's then, it needs to move from demonstrating best practice and implementation to catch the idiots and the thieves.
Marcelo?
Yeah, thank you for your question. Well, regarding the percentage of crew, I will start with the first question. Our tuna seiners in average are 1,000 metric tons. And the authorities, both the NFA and FFA, the fishing license and good standing, they advise the minimum requirement of crew on board. Sometimes it's 23, 24, but in average, our fishing vessels have 28. From that 28 crew on board, 70% could be foreigners. They are Filipinos. And 3 are PNG nationals. So that is in average. Sometimes some vessels have 4 or 5 PNG and the rest Filipino. Yeah, it's a fishing vessel by fishing vessel or by company, but in average, that is between 3 to 5 and the rest are Filipinos. Captains come either from South Korea or from the Philippines as well. The second question, wages. Well, I can tell you that when we started this due diligence, recruitment agencies were doing really bad things with wages, especially for locals. Thanks to this due diligence, now everybody's happy receiving the same wage. For PNG, which is totally different from Filipinos, because Filipinos have to be aligned with the benefits and wages from the Philippines, because they are under that contract. And with PNG, they are aligned with the labor of PNG and the wages in PNG. However, both of them, and this is across our 8 fleets and our 55 vessels, all of them, depending on the company, they have a bonus per catches, which is an incentive to take it back. Because just to share with you another case, I was assessing a fleet in Suriname. A similar case, 70% are Filipinos or Indonesian, and 30% are local from Suriname. But right now in Suriname, the locals never go back. They only go, they have a signed contract for 1 year, but they never go back after the first trip. And it's something that PNG saw decades ago. Now local people are staying on board, they are coming back to work, they are used to work, they like to work. Of course, there are a lot of benefits beside that, also social benefits.
Very good. Okay, any other questions? Back to... Yep.
Hello?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Very good.
So I have a question regarding innovation, because especially when we're in a conference like this regarding emerging technologies, there seems to be an obsession with funding innovation. And I was wondering if this could eventually cause issues, because you said it's better that we standardize data collection, and of course that's true. But is it possible that innovation can get in the way of this instead of moving towards it?
Is that for Hugh?
Thank you.
Perhaps? Yep.
For Hugh.
Heck. Yeah, I presume so. You know, all I would say is that innovation has, you know, if you look at computers and technology, has driven a reduction in the cost and improvement in the quality. So I don't think innovation per se is necessarily a bad thing. I just think there needs to be a management, and if there's one challenge with regards to innovation, it's everybody wants to go to the new bright thing instead of saying, well, is it really broken? And evolution is probably better than revolution. And you know, we're all guilty of trying to impose new things. I think everything needs to be tested. There's a place for everything. So no, I don't think innovation is necessarily a problem. Standardization of what you need to know and how you then digitize it and share it is really the key part for GDST. And that's why it's agnostic to the technology and the innovation. As long as they're capable of capturing data and creating it so it's able to be shared, then great. You know, it gives people their opportunities and they can adopt what they want.
Good. Questions? No? Going? No final one? Okay. So first of all, I'd like to, can we give our panelists a round of applause, please? Thank you very much. That was great. So I guess kind of take homes, it sounds like we've delved a bit into market drivers, but it sounds like the market drivers are not quite accelerating at the pace that we were hoping for. That's what was my take home from today. And my quote for the week from Hugh is, catch the idiots and jail the thieves. Yeah? So on that point, I'll thank you, the participants, for today, and we'll hope to see you in the coming sessions. I think there's another session here in about 45 minutes. Thank you very much, everyone.